Let's welcome our correspondent from Jamaica, Mr. Burford. He will correct me if I didn't pronounce it right. Good morning, sir. Just give me correction on your name, sir.
Garfield Burford. Thank you so much. You almost got it. Really appreciate it.
Very good. Well, we just
Thanks.
talk in Jamaica, and I am yet to visit Jamaica, but let's go straight into it. Obviously, just tell us about who you are and which media house you represent, if that's the case.
That's fine. So I am Director for News, Sports, Current Affairs at ABS Television. That's Antigua Barbuda Broadcasting Services here in Antigua Barbuda. And I'm a Jamaican. I've been covering news in Jamaica for years, over 2 decades actually. And I've been a journalist for 26 years and covered news in Jamaica. Hearing a little bit of a feedback, so sorry. Hearing myself, so it's a little bit difficult. But
All right.
anyway, let's try to work that out. Right. So yes, covering news in Jamaica since 2000 roughly. So over to was in Jamaica until 2016, and then I've been here in Antigua Barbuda since then. So yes, it's a pleasure to be with you. I was news manager at CVM Television in Jamaica, and of course now I'm director for news at Antigua Barbuda Broadcasting Services here in Antigua Barbuda.
All right, so Jamaica election has changed dynamics over the years. Obviously, I was just telling my colleague here, in the era of Michael Manley and Edward Siaga, it was a bloody battle, and literally, you had a number of incidents of murder and so on, leading up to election and during the election period. However, that has changed since Bruce Golding, Portia Simpson era, given that you have covered the election there. Just tell us about this particular election. Were there cases of violence, as has been the election in Jamaica been marred with in the past? Just speak to us from that era to where we are now. Obviously, safe and smooth election.
Right. Thank you so much for the context for your audience because that's crucially important as well. And thank you so much for working out you almost got it sorted in terms of the feedback, but anyway, it's back. In the 1970s, 1980s, the 1980 was the bloodiest election Jamaica's had. About 800 people died in that election. That was a consequential election. That was during the era of the Cold War. Edward Siaga came to power. Michael Manley, for example, was, with the PMP. There was a very sharp divide between left and right. The People's National Party was more left of center. The Jamaica Labour Party under Edward Siaga was more right of center. So, of course, that was during the period of the Cold War when there was this very, very also rabid ideological divide and ideological contretemps about issues of which do you align yourself with? You align yourself with the US and its allies, you align yourself with the Soviet Union and its allies. So I think that was the particular challenge that was faced during that particular time. In addition to the fact that there were external forces, there were external influences. I mean, people can do their research to look at the countries which tried to infiltrate Jamaica's situation, for example, with guns and so on. And of course, this played a significant role in the level of violence that was played out in those elections. Fast forward to the 2000s, the elections were far less violent. They were, of course, more about ideological debates, about policy issues and policy debates. So this election was along that lines. There was hardly any violence. I wasn't there myself physically, but I was following what was taking place there in Jamaica as well. And there was, as I said, hardly any particular challenge in terms of violence. There was a very, very rigorous, vigorous debate about policy issues, which promised, for example, was going to be more viable and which would be more attractive to the electorate. For example, the People's National Party had a promise of trying to increase the income tax threshold to 3.5 million Jamaican dollars. The Jamaica Labour Party, the incumbent, wanted to double the national minimum wage. So those were the issues which dominated the election. Not about fisticuffs, not about violence, not about gun violence. It was a pretty peaceful campaign. It was almost festive in some ways. I mean, the supporters of both major parties were seen, dancing in the streets with each other and so on. I don't know if there was any sort of bile or any sort of vitriol against each other. So that was very, very good, and that was welcomed.
Okay, so
In terms of the actual, sorry, go ahead, please.
yes, sorry to cut you there. So GLP-1 and of course Andrew Holness retaining his position there, third consecutive term. But I understand that
Right.
GLP would have ceded some seats to PNP. What does that tell us or tell you with regards to the way how the voters are looking at the government?
Right. So the parties went into the election before the dissolution of the parliament. There was a 49-13 split. Sorry, 49-14, because it's a 63-seat parliament. The Jamaica Labour Party going in with 49 seats, and the 14 for the People's National Party. By the time the preliminary count on the election night, it was 34-29, 34-29. Since then, there's been a recount. The Jamaica Labour Party has picked up another seat, Central Kingston, so it's now 35-28. There might be one or two little changes because the recounts are happening, but in terms, it's a certainly reduced majority. And I think that speaks to the fact that there has been a tightening of the electoral map, a tightening of the way the electorate sees things. And certainly the People's National Party has become more organized, better organized since the election in 2020. And I think that was shown in the election as well. You could say that there were some other issues which played a part, but I think that those were the issue. The fact that the People's National Party became more united, more organized, rather than compared to 2020. Some level of hemorrhaging of support, you could say, from the Jamaica Labour Party, but essentially it is a tightening of the electoral map compared to 2020, when it was an absolute shellacking that the People's National Party got 49-14.
Interesting there. And in terms of the third consecutive victory for Mr. Holness, tell us a little bit about how the population is accepting his policies and his way of governance. Is it something that what makes him stand out in terms of his leadership qualities? Because naturally, I mean, it's not normal. I know we have other leaders throughout the Caribbean who would have served multiple consecutive terms. But what about Mr.
Right.
Holness that stands out from the others?
Dr. Andrew Holness can be credited for being an extraordinary political figure in the post-independence life of Jamaica, and certainly by leading his Jamaica Labour Party to a third consecutive term, it is a tour de force. Even with a reduced majority, it shows a significant level of political capital that he's been able to show, and I think that the history will show that he will be one of the most defining, consequential figures in Jamaica's political history, especially post-independence life. What he's been able to do, and I, for example, covered in 2013 when he was challenged. Let's give your audience the history. So Andrew Holness became leader of the Jamaica Labour Party in 2011, following the resignation of Bruce Golding, consequent to the debacle that was caused by the extradition of Christopher Dudder-Scott, the Manad Phelps and Phillips matter. In other words, there was a lobbying, the government was accused of lobbying to assist a crime lord, Christopher Dudder-Scott, who, by the way, is serving a sentence in the United States now. So Bruce Golding's government fell because of that. In comes Andrew Holness, young in terms of leadership. He had been quite popular before that as education minister. So he becomes prime minister in 2011, goes into an election shortly after that, and is given a shellacking by Portia Simpson in 2011, December 2011. During his time in opposition, he's challenged as leader by Audley Shaw. And he staves off the challenge, wins the leadership, and is able to consolidate his position and his hold on power. 2016, the election is held, and he regains power. And since then, he's not looked back. He's won 2016, 2020, and now 2025. The first leader of the Jamaica Labour Party to take his party to a third consecutive term in office. And that is by itself quite significant because in Jamaica, the tradition has been not to go to third terms, except in the case of P.J. Patterson, for example, who won in 1993, 1997, and 2002. He then retired, of course, in 2006. But I think that Holness being able to do that, notwithstanding quite significant odds against him, including, for example, the concerns that or concerns that had been expressed about personal integrity, about corruption, and so on. The fact that he was able to overcome those challenges, surmount those challenges, is quite significant. And I think that, as I said, he was able to demonstrate that he is a leader of formidable political acumen.
All right, so I've heard you mention the issues, but I want to get particularly, well, let's say three key issues that was part
Right.
of the campaign for Andrew Holness that led to his third consecutive win. What were some of the
Right.
main topics or the main issues that dominated the Jamaica concerns among voters that would have led to his victory, and how he was able to tackle those issues on the platforms?
Right. That's a great question. So here are the issues. Andrew Holness faced significant challenge, faced significant concerns. There were risks, there were concerns about his personal integrity. There is a view that the People's National Party said, look, he was not certified by the National Integrity Commission, the Integrity Commission, the IC in Jamaica, which is the body that is set up constitutionally that is required to certify the financial returns or the financial information of the leader of the opposition and the prime minister. So there were some concerns about that. He's been, for example, taking the IC report, or he's asked the court to look into certain aspects of the work of the Integrity Commission. So there was that particular challenge that he faced about people thinking, certainly the opposition People's National Party, saying that he was not perhaps a paragon of integrity, right, in terms of his financial information. There
was
was
very
also the issue. Sorry, I just mentioning
No,
very
you go
quickly.
ahead.
As I mentioned earlier, there was also the very vigorous debate about which party would offer the electorate more. What has happened over the last 10, 12 years is that Jamaica has gone through a period of fiscal consolidation, fiscal tightening. So there's been a lot of sacrifice under IMF agreements. And Jamaica is now in one of the positions where it is almost seen as a model in terms of fiscal, getting its debt down. So the debt to GDP ratio is at 62% now, which is enviable because the international benchmark is 60%. That has come with a lot of belt tightening. It's come with a lot of significant primary surpluses. For example, the first international monetary fund agreement that Jamaica was under required a primary surplus of 7.5%. In other words, your primary surplus is essentially your ability to pay your debt, to service your debt. So in other words, the International Monetary Fund wanted to put Jamaica in sort of very tight stricture. After that, and I think both parties can take credit for maintaining the course of fiscal tightening and fiscal consolidation, and Jamaica has sacrificed because of that. Now, this election was about, after the sacrifice and after the gains which have been made, significant, impressive reduction in the debt to GDP ratio 62%, the net international reserves at an all-time high, unemployment at an all-time low, and a reduction in crime. How does that then translate into more benefit for the ordinary man? I think that was what was the crux of this election. And so
Very
the
good.
People's National Party, the opposition, was trying to say, look, let's try to increase, in fact, run about double or more than double the income tax threshold. They also said there should be no tax on overtime and tips. They also recommended that the first person or promised that the first child in a household to go to university would get a scholarship, and so on. So those were some of the main issues that they promised. The incumbent Jamaica Labour Party said, let's double the national minimum wage to 32,000 Jamaican dollars per month. but on a phased basis. And Prime Minister Holness waited quite late. He waited until about 3 days before the election on Sunday, before the Wednesday, to say we are going to double the national minimum wage if we're re-elected to office. And in fact, our first budget, we would increase it to 18,500 in that budget. It caused quite a bit of debate. Some of the associations, the business association said you can't do that unilaterally. You shouldn't do that unilaterally because it's going to have an impact on businesses. And so they're saying let's have consultation about that issue as well. So those were some of the key issues which dominated the debate, in addition to which leader was more popular. And as I mentioned to you, the concerns which had been expressed about Prime Minister Holness as well, and his financial information.
He did, and he was very tough on crime prior to the election. As a matter of fact, he said that there's no, well, I'm paraphrasing, there's no hiding place for criminal activity or gang lifestyle in Jamaica, and was very firm on that. How did that resonate with the population leading up to the election, as we get ready to close?
Right. I think that the level of crime reduction, especially in murders, has been extraordinary and has been welcomed by all well-thinking Jamaicans, at home and abroad. And I think that that was one of the significant achievements that the Prime Minister was able to point to say, why change? Continue with my Jamaica Labour Party administration because I've been able to do this. In addition to the economic fundamentals being put in a right order, being right-sized, I've also been able to bring down crime, which has been the bane of Jamaica's existence for a few decades, especially in terms of violent crime. So I think that that was welcomed by, as I said, all well-thinking Jamaicans. And I think that it was seen as one of the feathers in his cap of his administration, which would have played a part in, essentially his supporters saying, no, we're pretty happy with the fact that he's been able to bring down crime as well.
All right. We want to thank you for being with us this morning, sir. And I know you're very hot wherever you are. You're sweating profusely. And I will
absolutely.
Thank you for being with us.
I had to come out of my AC to speak with you.
I tell you what. All right.